Billionaire sees black waitress coding in the kitchen. Turns out she solved his company's biggest problem. What if I told you that sometimes the most brilliant minds are hidden in the most ordinary places? Margaret Williams had been washing dishes at Romano's diner for 3 years, her hands red and cracked from the hot water and harsh soap. Every night after her shift ended at midnight, she'd pull out her laptop, a battered old machine she'd bought secondhand, and lose herself in lines of code that danced across the screen like poetry only she could read. She'd taught herself programming through free online courses, staying up until dawn crafting elegant solutions to problems she'd never been paid to solve. On this particular Tuesday evening, as rain drummed against the diner's windows, Margaret didn't notice the well-dressed man in the corner booth watching her through the kitchen's service window. She was too absorbed in her work, fingers flying across the keyboard, completely unaware that her quiet passion was about to change everything. Where are you watching from tonight? Have you ever discovered your calling in an unexpected place? David Chen had built his tech empire from nothing, starting in his parents' garage 23 years ago. Now worth over $2 billion, he rarely found himself in places like Romano's diner, but tonight was different. His usual 5-star restaurant was closed for renovations, and he needed somewhere quiet to think. His company, Chen Technologies, was hemorrhaging money. Their new security software had a fatal flaw that his team of 60 programmers couldn't solve. 3 months of failed attempts had cost them millions, and their biggest client was threatening to walk away. Margaret moved through the kitchen with quiet efficiency, clearing plates and loading the industrial dishwasher. At 42, she'd worked every job imaginable to support her teenage son Marcus, who was studying pre-med at the community college. She'd never mentioned her coding hobby to anyone at work, who would believe that a dishwasher spent her free time building complex algorithms. Her co-workers saw her as reliable, hard-working Margaret who never complained and always stayed late when needed. As the last customer left and the kitchen grew quiet, Margaret thought she was alone. She pulled her laptop from her worn canvas bag and opened the project she'd been working on for months, a revolutionary approach to data encryption that combined traditional security methods with artificial intelligence. It was her dream project, something she'd been perfecting not for any assignment or job, but simply because she loved the challenge of making something beautiful and unbreakable. David had been about to leave when he glimpsed the glow of a computer screen through the service window. Curious despite himself, he quietly approached and watched as Margaret's fingers danced across the keyboard, writing code with the fluid grace of someone who truly understood the language of computers. The complexity of what he was seeing made him pause. This wasn't amateur work. The algorithms scrolling across her screen were sophisticated, elegant, and addressing exactly the kind of security vulnerabilities his company had been struggling to solve. When Margaret finally looked up and saw him standing there, her heart nearly stopped. She recognized him from business magazines and news articles. David Chen, one of the most powerful tech executives in the world, was standing in Romano's kitchen at 1 a.m, staring at her laptop screen. "I'm sorry," Margaret stammered, quickly closing her laptop. "I know I shouldn't be using this during work hours. I was just..." Her hands trembled as she prepared for what she was sure would be her termination. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not with Marcus's tuition due next month and rent already 2 weeks late. David held up a gentle hand. "Please, don't apologize. I'm David Chen. I couldn't help but notice what you were working on. That encryption algorithm, where did you learn to write code like that?" His voice carried genuine curiosity rather than accusation, but Margaret's defenses remained high. "Nowhere special," she replied quietly, gathering her things. "Just online courses and tutorials. It's just a hobby." She'd learned long ago not to dream too big, not to expect that her intelligence would be recognized or valued in spaces where she'd never been welcomed. David's mind raced as he recognized the elegant solution displayed on her screen. It was remarkably similar to the approach his team had been attempting, but her version was cleaner, more efficient. "Would you mind showing me your work? I think you might have solved a problem we've been struggling with for months." Margaret looked at him skeptically. In her experience, powerful people didn't ask dishwashers for help with anything, let alone complex technical problems. But something in his eyes seemed genuine, and after years of keeping her passion hidden, part of her longed to share it with someone who might understand. She reopened her laptop, her voice growing stronger as she explained her approach to layered encryption and adaptive security protocols. David listened intently, asking informed questions that revealed his deep understanding of the technology. For the first time in years, Margaret felt truly seen, not as a middle-aged woman washing dishes, but as the brilliant programmer she'd always known herself to be. If this moment of recognition touches your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. But Margaret had no idea that this conversation was about to reveal something that would change both their lives forever. The next morning brought harsh reality crashing back. Margaret's supervisor, Linda, cornered her before her shift began. "I heard you were bothering customers last night, using company time for personal business. This is your final warning, Margaret. One more incident, and you're gone." Someone had seen her talking with David and reported it, twisting the encounter into something inappropriate. Margaret's heart sank. She couldn't explain that the customer was a billionaire interested in her coding work. It sounded absurd even to her. She nodded silently and returned to her usual routine, the brief glimpse of possibility from the night before feeling like a cruel dream. Meanwhile, David couldn't stop thinking about Margaret's elegant solution. He'd asked his assistant to research her background, and what he discovered broke his heart. Margaret Williams had graduated summa cum laude with a computer science degree 18 years ago, but life had intervened. Her husband's death in a car accident when Marcus was 5 had forced her to take any job that provided immediate income and health insurance. She'd been overqualified for every position she'd held since, but survival had taken precedence over dreams. That afternoon, David returned to the diner, hoping to speak with Margaret again. He watched her work through the service window, noting how she moved with quiet dignity despite the dismissive way her supervisor treated her. When Linda noticed him watching, she approached his table with a fake smile. "Is there a problem with our service, sir? I hope that woman didn't bother you again last night. She's usually more professional." David's jaw tightened. Actually, Margaret was incredibly helpful. "I'd like to speak with her when she has a moment." Linda's expression soured. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. She's working." Through the kitchen window, David could see Margaret scrubbing pots, her shoulders tense with stress. He realized that even if his offer was genuine, the power dynamics at play made it nearly impossible for her to accept help without risking the job she desperately needed. Have you ever felt trapped by circumstances beyond your control, watching opportunities slip away because you couldn't afford to take risks? Let us know in the comments. Your story might inspire others facing similar challenges. David knew he had to find a way to help Margaret without putting her job in jeopardy, but time was running out for both of them. David made a decision that would change everything. Instead of approaching Margaret directly at work, he did something unprecedented. He bought Romano's diner. The elderly owner, Mr. Romano, had been trying to sell for months due to health issues, and David's offer was generous enough to ensure a comfortable retirement. The staff was informed of the ownership change the next morning. Linda tried to curry favor with the new boss, not realizing she was speaking to the same man she'd dismissed the night before. "Mr. Chen, I want you to know I run a tight ship here. I don't tolerate any unprofessional behavior from the staff." "Actually, Linda, there's been a change in management structure. Margaret Williams is now the general manager. You'll report to her." David's voice was calm but firm. The kitchen fell silent. Margaret stood frozen by the industrial sink, soap suds dripping from her hands. "I'm sorry, what?" she whispered. David approached her with a gentle smile. "Margaret, I'd like to offer you a position as head of security development at Chen Technologies. But I thought you might want to transition gradually, so the diner can serve as a secondary office while you get settled. Your encryption algorithm isn't just brilliant, it's exactly what we need to save our company." Tears welled in Margaret's eyes. "You bought an entire diner just to offer me a job?" "I bought a diner to give you the dignity and respect you deserve while making a life-changing decision. No one should have to choose between survival and dreams." Margaret looked around at her co-workers, people who'd become family over the past 3 years. What about everyone else? What about their jobs? Everyone who wants to stay will keep their positions with better pay and benefits. This place will continue running as a diner, but it'll also house a small satellite office for Chen Technologies. You can mentor young programmers from backgrounds similar to yours. For the first time in 18 years, Margaret felt hope blooming in her chest. She thought of Marcus, who could now focus on his studies without worrying about their financial survival. She thought of other brilliant minds washing dishes and stocking shelves, waiting for someone to recognize their potential. If you've been enjoying this story of second chances and hidden potential, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales like this one. Margaret's new chapter was just beginning. 6 months later, Margaret stood in the gleaming offices of Chen Technologies, watching her team of young programmers implement the security protocol she designed in Romano's kitchen. Her encryption system had not only saved the company millions but revolutionized their entire approach to data protection. The diner still operated downstairs, now serving gourmet coffee to tech workers and providing jobs for people transitioning into new careers. Marcus had transferred to a 4-year university on a full scholarship, inspired by his mother's courage to embrace her dreams. "You taught me that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be, Mom," he told her during one of their weekly video calls. Margaret had kept her promise to help others. The Margaret Williams Foundation, funded by her substantial salary and stock options, provided coding bootcamps for underemployed adults, particularly focusing on women and minorities who'd been overlooked by the tech industry. Linda had even enrolled in one of the programs, discovering her own talent for data analysis. David often found Margaret in the early morning hours, working on new projects with the same passion he'd first witnessed through that kitchen window. "Any regrets about leaving the dishwashing behind?" he asked one morning, setting a cup of coffee beside her keyboard. Margaret smiled, her fingers never pausing in their dance across the keys. "Only that it took me so long to believe I deserved to be here. But maybe I needed those years to understand that brilliance comes in many forms, and dreams don't have expiration dates." The company's latest project was Margaret's most ambitious yet, an AI system designed to identify and nurture hidden talent in unexpected places. She thought of all the Margaret Williamses out there, brilliant minds obscured by circumstance, waiting for someone to see their potential. As the sun rose over the city, casting golden light through the office windows, Margaret felt the deep satisfaction that comes from living authentically. She'd found her place in the world not by abandoning her past, but by integrating all the pieces of herself: the devoted mother, the dedicated worker, and the brilliant programmer who'd been waiting patiently for her moment to shine. If this story inspired you, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more tales that celebrate the extraordinary potential hidden in ordinary moments. Thank you for joining Margaret's journey from the kitchen to the corner office, and remember, your dreams are never too late to pursue.